Live. So are we live now, Tom? Okay. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting of West Devon Borough Council Hub Committee. We'll kick off straight away. First item on the agenda. Apologies for absence, Mr. White. I know there's one from Councillor Cheadle, but I believe he's listening in online.
That's correct. Thank you, Leader. We have an apology from Councillor Cheadle, who is viewing on the Teams stream. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are invited to declare any personal or disclosable pecuniary interest, including the nature and extent of such interest that they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Are there any declarations of interest that members would like to make at this point? I've got none, Mr. White. Item 3, items requiring urgent attention. I have none, Mr. White.
Me neither. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. Members, the minutes of the meeting held on 1st of February 2022 have been circulated. Could I have a proposer that these be accepted as a true and fair record of the meeting? Councillor Edmonds. Seconder, Councillor Mott, all in favour? Thank you, everyone.
That's carried. Thank you.
Public questions. I've not been advised of any.
That's correct. There are none. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Hub Committee Forward Plan members. On pages 7 to 10 of your agenda papers is the forward plan. If we can review this for accuracy and any comments that anyone may have about forthcoming items that are within that plan. Anyone like to raise any issues, or is everything very clear?
Leader, I'm aware of a couple since we published it, being the regeneration and investment strategy is incorrectly shown as economy on Councillor Crozier, and in fact it should be resources performance on Councillor Edmonds. And unfortunately, I've missed off Councillor Mott's name on the lead member of 2 planning related reports. So whilst the portfolio area is correct, it's omitted Councillor Mott's name.
Thank you. How could one ever forget Councillor Mott? If we're happy with that, with those amendments, members will accept the forward plan and move on. Item 7 deals with our response to the housing crisis. If I could ask Councillor Ratcliffe to introduce this paper. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you. Yes, the housing crisis we have declared, and unanimously, and it is interesting to see the support which is going, and particularly from the press coverage of what we're doing. All that I've received has been quite positive and been from people really around a lot of the areas of West Devon. Getting up to it, I think the background and the declaration are all fairly familiar, and it's been debated a lot. I think it is something which we're going to bring before us now as a recommendation to go through. I don't know whether Isabel Blake would like to say anything on this, or before we move along further.
Thank you. Mrs. Blake, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Councillor Radcliffe. Yes, the declaration of the housing crisis is a combination of lobbying activity, direct action, and activity that we'll be able to take in partnership. So it is a long-term plan. It took a long time to cause this housing crisis, and it'll take a while to get us out and look at remedies in which we can put in place. It's anticipated that this will be an ongoing piece of work, and it will form a fundamental part of the Year 2 action plan of the housing strategy, an update of which is due with you next month.
Thank you, Mrs. Blake. Members, any questions? I've got no Oh, Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I think it's probably a question really raised by Councillor Cheeto. So is he able to, does he want to raise that himself? Because it was exactly the same question that was in my mind. But I'll defer to Councillor Cheeto if he wishes to raise that question at this stage. If not, I'll happily pick it up.
I've been waving my hand, but I'm not quite sure how to attract attention from remote. Shall I?
Thank you. Councillor Cheeto, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm assuming that the question I'm about to ask is the same one Councillor Edmonds was going to ask on my behalf. It was half a question, half a comment, I think. We've declared the crisis, and I think we were all very much in support of us getting on and doing something. To then subsume the actions from our debate into year 2 of the housing paper doesn't, to my mind, send the sort of signal perhaps that we should about what we're doing. If it's a crisis, I think the public would expect to see us actually taking firm and decisive action and actually getting on with stuff that they can see us doing. So I in anticipation of having difficulty joining the meeting this afternoon, did send an email around to Hub colleagues with a suggestion that we prepare a simple action plan showing those things which we can do ourselves and will do, those things which we can only do by altering or modifying the joint local plan, i.e. that we can't do now, but we should be able to do in the future, and those actions which require national government legislation changes, therefore we can lobby. And through a relatively simple action plan that we could perhaps publish so that the public could see what we were doing, we might put some sort of meat on the bone of this crisis. As I say, to bury it in an action plan of a paper that occasionally surfaces doesn't, to my mind, shriek crisis response. I think there was a question in there somewhere.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cheadle. I have to say I agree, and I think we were in agreement with this at the council meeting broadly as well. Obviously, we've got a housing strategy, and we don't particularly want to create a whole new strategy. But there will be a number of different actions, and I see no reason why we shouldn't bring those together into an action plan that gives us some clarity on this issue. And those actions, where needed, will come back as individual papers to Hub to be advanced as quickly as possible, depending on the nature of the action that is going to be suggested and looked at. So I hope that will be okay with everybody. I think that's the proposed way forward. So thank you for your question. I hope that answers it.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which, Councillor Crozier.
Yeah, my question is that some of this business we'll be doing is going to be commercially sensitive, so we won't be able to publish everything, because if we start publishing proposed plans and what have you, we don't want every other developer crawling over our backs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. I think, again, as would be normal with this type of eventuality and the sort of actions we're looking at, if something is commercially sensitive, it will fall into part 2. So I agree with you entirely. Any other questions, members? In which case, could I ask Councillor Ratcliffe to move the proposal, the recommendations?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the Hub Committee, the recommendations are that the Hub Committee, 1, approves the proposed measures to address the housing crisis as set out below in this report, and 2, agrees to send a letter outlining the Council's lobbying objectives to the Right Honourable Michael Grove MP, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities.
Thank you. Could we have a seconder, please? Councillor Pearce, thank you. Members, we're in debate. Any debate on this issue? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Leader. This is the start of a way forward, which is long overdue, I think. We've been building up to this crisis for some time. I have to support Councillor Cheadle's concerns about the length of time that some of this is going to take. And I was horrified to learn that the Spring Hill tendering process won't be moving forward until July, which I was quite horrified at. I mean, there's been on the cards for some time of our intentions to remodel the Spring Hill building. And I would have thought that we would have had something in place to begin with, that we could have moved forward fairly quickly. And as Councillor Cheadle said, when you've got a crisis, you've got to crack on with it. And I think there's going to be concerns from the public if we aren't seen to be taking action pretty quickly on some of the items of the 15 items. I know one or two already in hand. But can officers explain why it's taken so long to bring the Spring Hill tendering process forward? Because that was approved for that development in December, and yet I understand it's going to be July before everything's all ready to go forward for the next stage to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I think you're partly correct. As I understand it, the tendering documents will be available and available for being sent out to interested parties on the 7th of April. July would be the lead time to get it back into to Hub, as I understand it. But perhaps I could bring in Mr. Brooke, if you're available, Mr. Brooke, just to answer any other parts of Councillor Pearce's question.
Thank you, David. I think we all recognise that it's a priority, and we are aspiring to bring it back to a decision in July, or the soonest meeting we can, where we have the answers that you will want with the decisions you will need to take. There's been multiple parties involved in the process to get this far, one of which is our public sector colleagues in the NHS, amongst others, and we haven't been able to tender a scheme without knowing exactly what constraints there are on the site. So whilst I recognise that it would be desirable to bring this on the fastest track and timeline we can, fortunately it's taken till now to get those issues to a state where they are resolved sufficiently for us to go to the market. Getting a quicker answer that's not right probably doesn't benefit us. So we wanted to get the right answer, which I accept has taken a bit longer than perhaps is desirable. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Brooke. I hope that helps, Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you.
I think we all realise that we want to move this forward as quickly as we can, but we have to do it correctly and properly as well. Any other debate, members? Councillor Cheadle, can I bring you in?
Thank you for recognising a waving hand from a distance. I just want to raise, I'm afraid, a perennial point that I make from time to time. Once again, this paper has come to Hub with the incorrect template at the back of it, which gives no mention of the consultation, engagement or communications strategy to be associated with this paper. And in fact, most of the papers today have the missing template, if I could put it that way. I don't know how many times I've raised this, and I don't know why it's proving so difficult, but I shall continue raising it until it's fixed.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Could I perhaps ask Mr. White to take that away as an action point from here? And as lead members, if we can all double check the papers and make sure that those are included, I think the point is well made. Thank you. Any other debate, members? Councillor Daniel.
You're on.
That's okay. I just noticed in the local government daily news that Southam's offering a scheme where they have £5,000 to encourage people who are renting to go into a shared home ownership. And I'm wondering whether we considered anything like that for our residents.
Can I perhaps bring Mrs. Blake in on that one? I know there is a scheme to encourage residents to downsize in social housing, but perhaps I could ask you to elaborate on that point as well.
Yes, members of South Hams voted to approve a scheme called the Step On Grant, which is aimed at people in shared ownership property to help them step on the home ownership ladder with a £5,000 deposit towards a share in a shared ownership property. And we're trialling that scheme. It's a pilot scheme. There's £60,000 available for that. And it may be that we look at delivering something very similar in West Devon as well. I think it's the first of its kind in the country, so it's quite innovative, and hopefully the point of it is to free up some housing stock for people on the housing register by helping support those people into shared ownership.
Thank you. I think that therefore will be one of the things that we bring forward in this series of papers that we're considering. So probably needs to be added to our action plan. So thank you for that. Any other debate, members? Got nothing coming forward. I can't see Councillor Tudor from here, unfortunately, but looking okay to me.
I'm fine.
Excellent. If we can therefore go to a vote, all those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. If we could move to item 8 on the agenda, members, the Planning Improvement Plan update. If I could ask Councillor Mott to introduce this item. Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Leader. Members are aware that part of the Planning Improvement Plan approved last September was to review and improve upon the validation checklist. This has been done in consultation with agents and other agencies and is shown at Appendix 1. It's hoped that this, along with our dedicated pre-app service, will improve applications and see a reduction in returns. Applications which do not meet validation criteria create a large and unnecessary workload for officers, and it is proposed that a 10% fee for returned applications will be imposed to help cover the costs of that. Also included in this report is the Planning Charter, again having gone to consultation, which outlines the expectations that will underpin the service going forward. Members, any questions, please?
Thank you, Councillor Mott. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Leader. I can't find it now, but there was reference here to minor changes to planning applications. I can't find it. I should have written that down. But anyway, I just wondered what the terminology is for minor changes or minor amendments, because given the issues that we've had in the past over minor amendments, I have real concerns about this, and it's somewhere in, now is the time that we need to get on top of this.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Could I bring in Mr. Weimer perhaps to answer that one?
Thank you. I think Councillor Pearce, you're probably referring to this. I'm pretty sure it's a section within the planning charter that effectively says that once a planning application is submitted, we will deal with it on the basis of the plans that are first submitted, and we won't accept any further changes during the processing of the application unless they are very minor changes. And whilst it would be impossible to give an absolute 100% definition, my view would be that if the changes are to the extent that the application would need to be re-advertised, that would be more of a change than we would be prepared to accept. So it's only very minor changes to a current application, and I think up to now there has been confusion amongst certainly neighbours trying to keep on top of which revision of plan is in with us at any particular moment in time, which is why we're saying we're going to deal with it on the basis of the plan submitted.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leach.
Yes, can somebody tell me what the percentage is of applications that come in that are not complete?
It's about 60%.
Thank you. Can I bring in Councillor Cheadle?
Thank you very much. Yes, I had a question on the planning charter. It says in the charter that one of our aims is to make sure that the applicant knows who they're dealing with, how to contact the council, and when to respect a reply. The greatest number of complaints I have about the planning system at the moment from applicants is that they continuously ask for an update on their planning application and hear absolutely nothing back from the planning department. And often they find that the planning officer concerned has changed during the course of the application. So I'd be keen to know exactly what our standard is going to be about answering requests from applicants for updates on the process of their application, particularly when it is past the due date for determination.
Thank you. Mr. Weimer, would you be able to answer that one?
I'll certainly try. It's not always as straightforward as contacting the applicant. And the reason I'm saying that is there's a couple of situations we've got at the moment where the case officer has kept the agent entirely up to speed, but the applicant is now saying, well, you haven't contacted me, so you're not keeping me up to speed. But we will keep contacting the agents and hope the agents keep their clients informed of what we're saying. The moving forward, members will recall that you have approved some additional resources and additional officers to be employed. That is, 3 of the 4 are now with us. The 4th one's in a couple of weeks, and I am, as I said before, I am confident that with that additional resource, we will now be dealing with a significant number of more applications within time. So we by the fact that we've got the correct number of people to deal with the volume of work, coupled with the changes we're making to the validation checklist and dealing with applications as submitted, my view is that the number of applications that go out of time will be significantly less, and therefore it will be a lot easier to make sure that officers do keep in touch with agents as soon as they know something isn't going to be dealt with in time. But I do absolutely acknowledge that it's something that we need to improve over how we've been for the last 46 to 12 months.
Thank you. So should I read into that then that if I'm an applicant and I put in a planning application and I hear nothing and it goes over the time for determination, a member of the planning team will get in touch with me and explain why?
If you've put in an application yourself without using an agent, yes. If you've used an agent, which about probably 90% do, then we will be in touch with the agent rather than the applicant, because that's what their role is.
Yeah, I get that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weimer. I think probably as members, we probably all share that the sentiment behind that question from anecdotal evidence that we all receive. So I'm pleased to hear that that this will be improving. So hopefully that will continue to be the case. Councillor Crozier.
I had an inquiry last week from an agent who took pre-app advice and paid the sum involved to get the application correct on behalf of their client. The application was made on the 7th of February. As far as I know, it's still not on the portal. Is there a reason why?
Clearly, we're not in a position of talking about individual cases at the moment. I don't know whether there's anything that you might want to add, Mr. Wyman, but I suggest we look at that outside the meeting.
If I could just make one one observation. Then, if perhaps Councillor Crozier can let me know the details of the site, I can do some more investigation. But there has been an issue with the national planning portal. They did a IT upgrade that hasn't quite worked. So that there was a couple of weeks where applications were submitted via the national portal, but they haven't been pushed through to us, so we haven't got them. I know the portal is working on it, and we've now got a list of those, and we're contacting the agents. I don't know whether it's one of those that was held up because of that. For that, hand on heart, that's outside of our control.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, can I ask Councillor Mott to move the recommendations?
Thank you. I think it's also important to remind members that in the main, most applications do go through without issue. In the meantime, though, I would like to move the recommendations as detailed on page 19 of your agendas.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Pearce, thank you. Members, any debate on this item? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Leader. I welcome this move forward. I think it's very important that everyone knows what they're doing. What has been horrific for me is the number of applications that we get that are unacceptable because of the lack of detail. And we've heard now 60% of applications are not as they should be. So I think this way forward will save a lot of time, officer time, and a lot of angst amongst applicants if they know exactly what they've got to do.
I think it's absolutely necessary, Councillor Pearce, thank you. We have some sort of triage system, I suppose, that makes sure that these get weeded out quickly and sent back quickly. And that will, I'm sure, take a lot of heat out of the system. So thank you for that comment. Any other debate, members? Councillor Daniel.
I just want to say that I'm really pleased to see that it has mentioned in the climate change and biodiversity impact that there will be submissions of all sustainable travel plans on applications in rural parts of the borough, and also submission of carbon reduction plans for all new developments. I think that's a good step forward for sustainable houses for the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. Any other debate, members? Councillor Cheadle, I think, is wanting to come in. Councillor Cheadle.
No, I must have just been nodding off.
I thought I'd looked over my shoulder and saw a little yellow hand, but it was a
legacy hand.
I think you're imagining yellow hands now.
I'm not surprised. In my sleep, I think. Okay. Any other debate, members? In which case, can we move to a vote on the recommendations? All in favour?
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, members. If we could move to item 9 on the agenda papers, the regeneration and investment strategy. And if I could ask Councillor Edmonds to introduce this paper. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. Changes to the Public Works Loans Board borrowing rules resulting from local authority investment activity out of area have meant that the Council's current commercial property investment strategy requires updating. The amended strategy appended to this report reflects the changes in the PWLB borrowing rules and the aspirations of the Council to support projects and investments that deliver regeneration, employment, the JOP and housing, strategic investments, climate change, and our corporate strategy within West Devon. It also allows the Council to have a streamlined decision-making process in place should it be needed for time-critical decisions. This report does not propose any changes relating to borrowing thresholds or the approval process through which the strategy is deployed. However, it is proposed to change the name of the Invest to Earn Committee to the Regeneration and Investment Committee to better reflect the amended strategy and new borrowing rules. So finally, Chair, the report recommendations are that the Hub Committee recommend to Council to approve the update to the regeneration and investment strategy. And secondly, change the title of the Investor-Owned Committee to the Regeneration and Investment Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Members, any questions? Councillor Pearce.
Mine isn't a question, Leader, it's an observation under the executive summary 1.2. The second sentence, borrowing outside of area is no longer an acceptable approach. We've always borrowed outside of area. The Public Works Loan Board is based in London. Surely that should read borrowing outside, borrowing outside of area. No, that's not it.
You mean investing outside?
Yeah, investment, yeah. Borrowing for investment outside an area should be the wording.
I think you're right, Councillor Pearce. So we need to amend that and note accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? In which case, could I ask Councillor Evans to move the recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Leader. If I can find it now, I wasn't expecting to reach this point quite as quickly, I have to say. So, yes, I move the recommendations, which can be found on page 29 of the agenda papers.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mott. Thank you. Members, we're into debate on this issue. Any debate? Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you for recognising my yellow hand so quickly. Yes, I'm no longer a member of this committee, but was at the foundation of it a couple of years ago. Under the title Invest to Earn, it was pretty clear that we would only take on investments where the return was positive. And there was an understanding that we should keep a very, very close handle on risk, because should any of these investments turn sour, then obviously the council finances would have to, in a sense, come to the rescue. Under this new investment strategy, I'm fully supportive of it. The onus has shifted away slightly from making investments which are sort of cash positive in their outcome towards ones which are more altruistic and in line with sort of council values, like possibly affordable housing and other things. But my concern is that these might expose the council to a higher level of risk. And I just wanted some reassurance, really, from the members of the committee, perhaps Councillor Edmonds himself, that almost a tighter grip will be held on risk than perhaps was the case in the previous strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. I think I can assure you that we'll continue to look at each case that comes forward on a case-by-case basis and make sure there are full feasibility studies and business cases in each situation. But I do accept that there's perhaps a wider remit here in terms of regeneration and other objectives we might want to achieve. But it will mean each case is considered very carefully and continue to be considered carefully. Councillor Evans, I don't know whether you want to add anything to that. And
I agree with that, but I think really what we've got here is greater flexibility, but certainly that would not include a reduction in our scrutiny of risk, and I would say completely the opposite, particularly in the world we find ourselves in now. But I do welcome the additional flexibility I think that this strategy gives us, and in terms of yield as well, there's a relaxation. We're not aiming at a minimum yield, but clearly all those things will be carefully considered. And it's very hard to see circumstances when perhaps we would take on an investment where there is perhaps an unacceptable risk or a yield that is not favourable to the council. So I'm sure we will continue to look at each application on its merits and with a high degree of prudence, to protect the council and obviously, council taxpayers. So absolutely, that is byword scrutiny on risk and yield, and indeed all the factors that go to reaching any decision. I think overall it gives us slightly more flexibility under this remit to consider propositions that may come our way, and where they're appropriate, then we will take those forward.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Cheadle?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think the risk profile does change slightly as a result of changing the strategy. We must keep a very close eye on risk, because our finances are never far away from that sort of line that we don't want to cross over.
Thank you. I'd agree with that. I think we clearly do need to bear in mind our overall finances when we're looking at the business case for whatever investment we make, and I think that remains the case. Any other questions, members? In which case, Councillor Evans, if you'd like to move the... Oh, you already moved the recommendation. We were in debate. I do apologise, everyone.
Fine.
We'll move to the vote. All in favour?
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you. We'll move to item 10 on the agenda, which is month 10 budget monitoring. I think there's a slight error on the agenda here. It should be 2021-22 as on the paper. But Councillor Evans, if I could ask you to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Chair. The Revenue Budget Monitoring Report covers the period to the end of January 2022 and is showing a projected year-end deficit of 43,000, which is a slight increase on the figure of 33,000 reported in December 2021. The budget forecast table on pages 45 and 46 of your agenda papers sets out details of the budget variations with explanatory notes for each item. Most areas of income are showing positive returns, but car parking income and investment income are forecasted to be below budget at the year end. With the lifting of COVID restrictions and hopefully some warmer weather, car parking income will recover as we move into a new financial year. Investment income is below annual budget due to historically low interest rates. COVID funding received from the government has been used to meet the shortfall in car parking income and the cost of COVID expenditure of £114,000. Members will have noted that the council has invested £3 million with Standard Chartered Bank. The fund supports sustainable development to ensure the integrity of the environment. And I'm pleased to confirm that none of the funds we're invested in have links with Russia. The income monitoring table on page 50 shows that income from employment estate is anticipated to achieve budget at the year end. A good performance when viewed against the challenges businesses have faced during the pandemic. Garden and trade waste are also showing strong performances. An updated schedule of reserves is attached to Appendix A, showing a total reserves of £6.755 million. So finally, Chair, the report recommends that the Hub Committee resolves to note the forecast income and expenditure variations and the overall projected deficit of £43,000.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Members, any questions? Councillor Ewings, again, I would like to ask a question online.
Thank you, Councillor Jury, and a question for you, Councillor Edmonds. Good afternoon to you all. With the deficit in car parking monies and funds, are we concerned with the exorbitant costs in fuel diesel at the moment, that will have a negative impact on our car parking income? Has that been allowed for anywhere, please?
Good afternoon, Councillor Ewings. Yeah, it's a very valid question. The car park income target is remaining unchanged for the next financial year. Yeah, that's obviously a concern. But one would hope as the visitor economy returns in numbers with the lifting of restrictions, it's very difficult, I think, to gauge quite what the impact will be at this stage. But obviously, that is one that will, as it always is, monitored on a very regular and close basis. I don't know.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Sellis.
Thank you, Leader. Will West Devon invest in local agriculture or local food production? So, that's okay.
Right. Well, I think we've got the question. The question was, will West Devon invest in local food production?
I think the answer, Councillor Sellis, is yes, if the right proposition comes forward and it passes all the tests of risk, yield, etc. We're looking at tourism, we're looking at all sorts of opportunities, and I can see no good reason why agriculture would not be amongst those. It depends how it comes forward, what the proposition is, and all the same tests will apply as to any other proposition that comes before us.
Thank you. I think there are also perhaps wider issues of supporting farmers, encouraging a circular local economy and reducing food miles, and all of the sort of things that we can perhaps try and influence and encourage as a council. And I certainly see our place doing that as well under our placemaking mandate. So we will definitely be doing what we can. Members, any other questions? In which case, Councillor Evans, could I ask you to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I move the recommendation, which is on page 43 of your papers.
A seconder, please. Councillor Mott. Thank you. Members, we're in debate. Any debate on this item? No debate coming forward. So thank you. Obviously, a very informative and complete paper. So thank you to Councillor Edmonds and Mrs. Buckle and the team. If we could move to a vote. All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Can we move on to item 11 on the agenda, which is capital budget monitoring? And if I could ask Councillor Edmonds to please introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the report confirms that as at the 31st of January 2022, all capital projects were within individual capital budgets approved by members. There is currently an underspend on this year's budget of £193,457, as detailed in the summary of capital projects in appendices A and B. But please note, these are restricted documents. The report provides members with an update on each of the capital projects, and a list of Section 106 deposits is shown in Appendix C, and they total £1.3 million. So the report recommendation, Chair, is that the Hub resolves to endorse the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you. I've got one very simple sort of accounting question. If you turn to Appendix C, which is the list of 106 is currently extant. The figure at the extreme right hand end in brackets against each one, could someone explain exactly what that is? Does that mean that sum is in the kitty but not spent, or was that the original amount that was set aside but it has been spent, or something else?
Mrs. Buckle, are you able to answer that question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, that's exactly right. So the figures in brackets on page 73, Appendix C, that is money that the council has currently received in its bank account and has not yet spent on. So the section 106 is money in the bank, if you like, but it has not yet been spent on the specific reason for that section 106. So, for example, in the blue rows, we've split those down by the delivery plans. So with regards to the homes built in natural environment delivery plan, there's 690,000 of section 106 deposits in that category. We've then split it down between strengthening community wellbeing, and in total we've got 1.3 million in section 106 deposits. And members of the audit committee consider the accounts on an annual basis, you will see those section 106 deposits sitting on the balance sheet as creditors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckle. That helped, or Councillor Cheadle?
Yes, I'm sure, like me, other councillors' eyes will be drawn to the ones that have a defined lifetime, but are nearing the end of that. So, you know, to be spent within the next 10 years, and the 10 years is up in a year's time. Presumably, our attention will be on making sure that we're not required to refund that money if it's not spent.
Mrs. Buckle?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that is correct. We've never had to repay a section 106 deposit. We have a monitoring officer that very closely monitors all of those dates. So as you say, the restriction or committed end date is a certain period of time after the money has come into the council's bank account. So if you look at the first one on that list, for example, the date received was 12th of January 2013. So we would have until the 12th of January 2023 to spend that section 106. So yes, we monitor all of those section 106s very carefully. And last September, there was a report to the Hub Committee which showed progress on spending all of those section 106s, and they were colour coded, red, amber and green, and gave an indication of projects for all spending the section 106 deposits. So we will do that on a half yearly basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buckle. Councillor Edmonds.
Just to add to that, I think I'm right in saying, Mrs. Buckle, that as the date draws nearer, the ward member is involved in that process. The respective ward member is involved in that process to ensure that that money is effectively used.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that helps, Councillor Cheadle.
It does. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, members? Councillor Leach.
Yes, it's reference 3.6, Parklands Leisure Centre. It states here that there have been several repairs over the past few months. I'd like to remind all members, especially new ones, that this has been going on ever since Parklands was built. So it's actually cost a small fortune over the years. So my question is, in fact, it's a bit of pleading here, that the council keeps looking to find a better solution to this flaw. And can somebody assure me that money will be kept in the budget until this has been rectified properly?
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Mrs. Buckle.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's correct. The movable floor was a condition of the original lottery funding, the Sport England funding that was utilised to build the Oakhampton Leisure Centre. With regards to repairs, under the contract, repair costs do fall to the leisure contractor. So we are not paying for those repairs. That falls to the leisure contractor. The reason there is a capital budget provision in here is it's recognised that in the future there may need to be an engineering solution procured for that movable floor. It is working at the moment, but there have been difficulties with it in the past, and that's why we are recommending, and we feel it is prudent to leave that budget provision in at the moment, because we are conscious that although it's working at the moment, there may be a future need. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that helps, Councillor Leach. Any other questions? Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from that with regard to the movable floor, if we've had this number of problems with it, have we not had any comeback with the manufacturer of this?
I'm not sure. I don't know whether Mrs. Buckle can answer that.
I can't answer that specific question about the manufacturer. I do know that we've had quite a bit of dialogue with Fusion about different solutions. I think we've tried different things. The solution that's in place at the moment is working, so I think we are hopeful that it will continue to work. And yeah, I don't have any further details, but we can provide that for members.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Do you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, I think I'd possibly help a bit. One of the biggest problems right from the start is that this particular system was developed and sold here in Britain, but it was an Italian company. And actually trying to get any information from that company proved almost impossible. What we did try to do is get, because it was recommended by Sport England way back, what we tried to do is to get some pennies back or money put into the system from Sport England, because they had recommended this system in the first place. That wasn't successful either.
Thank you. I dare say, Mr. Brook, that it's something Mr. Parkinson has frequently on his agenda and is keeping an eye on as well. So no doubt we'll return to it in due course. Any other questions, members? Councillor Cheadle.
Sorry, an old hand.
Okay, no problem. In which case, Councillor Crozier.
Leader, I had this problem this morning. Old hands cost £5 into the mayor's charity.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. In which case, could I ask Councillor Edmonds to move the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I move the recommendation, which can be found on page 59 of the agenda papers.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mott. Members were in debate. Any debate on this item? In which case, members will move to a vote. All in favour?
That's unanimous approval. Thank you, Leader.
Members, if we can move to item 12 on your agenda papers, the exempt accommodation update. Just to add to any confusion, there might be, can members please note that the appendices are also exempt. So if we do need to go into discussing any of the specifics, we will need to move into part 2. Many members will be aware that around 3 years ago, we became aware of a new provider of accommodation within West Devon, which appeared to be seeking to increase exempt housing benefit claims to a considerably higher level than had previously been seen. We have spent some time and resources resisting that claim as being a scheme that sought to take advantage of some of the most vulnerable people living in our societies. It's a long story, and I'm sure members are well aware of the circumstances. Whilst the council recognises the benefits that can come from an exempt housing scheme in particular circumstances, we do have concerns that the scheme can be abused. Accordingly, we have had a number of meetings with the housing regulator, with our MPs, with a Devon County Council, the Department for Work and Pensions, the Department for Levelling Up Communities and Housing, the District Councils Network, the Local Government Association, and the Downing Street Policy Unit on this issue, and have managed to raise the profile of it considerably. The Department for Levelling Up Communities and Housing is actually now mounting an inquiry into the whole process, part of which has come from the direction of county councils and top level councils who have also had their problems with these types of schemes. West Devon Borough Council has submitted evidence to that inquiry. We remain completely committed to making sure that these schemes are used for good purposes and are not used to abuse those weak and vulnerable members of our society who need them in their time of need. The process we've gone through and the evidence that we've submitted to the Downing Street Policy Unit and to the inquiry are attached to the paper and are provided to members in order to keep them up to date and up to speed. So whilst trying to avoid talking about any of the specifics, if members have any questions, I'd be very pleased to try and answer. Councillor Daniel.
Yes, thank you. Could I just ask, are we talking about a type of accommodation where someone has a 5-bedroom bungalow, say, and then they rent the rooms out individually to vulnerable people and then supposedly provide support for them, but that's not really monitored anywhere in the system? Thanks.
But perhaps, but not entirely. The sorts of accommodation we're talking about are usually houses in multiple occupation where there is some sort of additional care that is also provided. Where that is done through a housing association and there are additional costs involved in either adapting the property or in providing that additional care over and above a care package, then there can be a legitimate claim for a higher housing benefit allowance. So it's those type of schemes, but it is where a scheme is artificially engineered in order to provide a higher return because there is no cap on the housing benefit, that particularly fall under our microscope and are being considered here. So yes, and it is something that I believe is a problem nationwide, hence the inquiry. Members, any other questions? In which case, members, I would like to move the recommendations. There are 2 recommendations. They're shown on page 75 of your agenda papers. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Leach, thank you. Members, we're moving into debate, if there's any debate. Councillor Cheadle, I'm sorry, I think I might have missed the fact that you wanted to come in with a question.
No, I was preempting it. It's a matter for debate rather than a question. I'd just like to put on record, actually, my thanks to you personally and also to the team in West Devon that has been pursuing this issue. It's not been easy. It's been long and torturous, and it's with huge gratification we now see the possibility of some progress being made. Had it not been for the tenacity of the West Devon team, and to a fair extent yours as well, I don't think we'd have got nearly as far as we have.
Thank you. I think that is absolutely right as far as the team is concerned. There's been a really good team working on this, and they've all done a magnificent job, so I'd like to pass my thanks on to them as well. And it at times hasn't been easy, and we do feel as though we've been swimming against the tide, but we, I think, have been justified and have finally got there. So thank you for that. Any other debate, members? Councillor Leach.
I don't like copying everybody else, but I agree with you. I'd like to thank the team for everything they've done on this. I was in on it literally at the start, and I'm just amazed it's taken the government, Department of Work and Pensions, etc., all this time before someone starts to take notice of this national disgrace. Leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Councillor Daniel.
Yes, I just want to also say thank you to the team and yourself for the hard work that's gone into this. As an ex or a retired social worker, I was involved in quite a few safeguarding cases in people in this type of accommodation, which is why I asked the question. And really, you know, we need to work much more closely together with other agencies involved to try and protect the vulnerable people in this type of accommodation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. I think we do, and our involvement as a district council, of course, is limited to being the gatekeepers to the housing benefit, but that's a useful trigger point, I think, but also at times the environmental health team, which says something in itself, I think. So, yes, thank you for that. And we do need to be aware and make sure that we get this right, I think, collectively as working in concert with all the other agencies that are involved. So I agree entirely. Any other debate, members? In which case we'll move to a vote. So all those in favour?
That's unanimous, the recommendation. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, members. And that brings our business for this afternoon to a close. So thank you, everybody, for your input and contributions. And we'll see you all at a council meeting soon. Thank you very much.